Hello and welcome to the Sweeney Show, Business and Legal Podcast. Joining me here today is Jack Cahil of B.Cahill Structural Engineers, based in Cork City. Jack, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, give us your time here today. If you want to just tell everybody a bit about yourself, who you are, your company and your experience and all that kind of stuff.
Well, we're civil structural engineers. We were established in 1987 and we've been operating in Cork City Centre since.
Okay.
I have a background in structures. I worked with the consulting engineers many years ago, and we deal in a lot of property, principally domestic, commercial and residential.
Okay, units. Very good. So like say I am a first time buyer and I'm buying second-hand property. So say it's in an estate, maybe in Cork, in the suburbs, and I have gone to my bank, so I've got my money and I have a mortgage and I have a bit of savings, I have my deposit and all that, and someone told me I needed a solicitor obviously to do the conveyance and that's required, and now I've heard along the grapevine that I need an engineer. Do I need an engineer if I'm buying a house, I suppose?
Absolutely do. Your house purchase is probably the biggest purchase you're ever going to make, and that's changing up. You'll be spending more money. You need to know the condition of the house, if there are problems with it, what those problems are, and how much it's going to cost to rectify them.
Okay, and then, so how do I find an engineer?
The engineer should be a member of Engineers Ireland, ideally a chartered engineer.
Okay.
A chartered engineer basically is an additional qualification. You've passed a professional exam and you're qualified to do.
And is that something that you would ask an engineer, or do you presume that they all have this qualification?
No, you should ask. You can get chartered surveyors, architects can do surveys as well, but the chartered engineer has a structural knowledge that the other professions really don't have.
Okay.
The engineer should be covered by insurance, and that's one of the questions you should definitely ask them. And the level of that insurance should be commensurate with the value of the property.
Okay. And is the survey, is it for my bank? Is it reassurance for myself? Is it who's it actually for? Why do I actually need it?
Yeah, there are a number of surveys that are done. The bank will generally do a valuation survey, and that valuation survey will identify major problems, but it's purely to put a figure.
So say for example the house was built in 2002, so the house is like 15, 16 years old now.
Okay.
So would I not say to myself, that house is only 15 years old, it's probably alright, do I need an engineer?
Okay, the 2002 means that any structural guarantee which would have a 10-year life is now gone. Okay. So you now have no
so
backup.
So that's like a home bond documentation or something like that.
Absolutely.
Every house is guaranteed a new build for 10 years. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
We look at new and old properties slightly differently, and we can go through that in a minute, but your second-hand property more than 10 years old, like there are very few houses that I inspect that have no faults.
Okay.
The question is, are the faults serious? Are they serious enough for you to pull out of the purchase?
Yeah.
Are they going to cost you money to repair?
And then at what stage of the transaction is it, I suppose, prudent or wise to actually engage the engineer?
Sometimes that's actually dictated by the auctioneer, in that they will not accept a deposit until you have your engineer's report done.
Okay.
Sometimes
would that be a trigger if for you, if an auctioneer was telling you, I'm not going to take your deposit until you get the engineer's report first?
Not really. They do that in order.
I mean, a trigger for a purchaser.
Yeah.
Why is he telling me to get the engineer the engineer report so early in the process?
I think that's probably really a bit much into it.
Okay.
Basically, what they want to do is they want to be sure you're interested.
Okay.
If you pay a deposit and they tell other purchasers, sorry, it's sold, you get an engineer's report done, and you then pull out as a result of that report, then they've lost business.
Okay. So if say I'm a first time buyer, and take for example that house again, 15, 16 years old, and I've engaged in yourself, what's the pricing structure to take an engineer's report?
It varies a lot from engineer to engineer, and it's very dependent on the quality and what they're looking at. Generally speaking, you should budget something of the order of €600 including that.
Okay. And that
now I should say is if your house is worth $1 million,
Of course.
then that 600 is going to increase.
And then the actual process of the report, completing the report, is that you obviously to visit the site, that you need to physically attend the house.
Absolutely.
That's not something you do by plans or by
not at all,
drawings or word of mouth.
Generally, if I'm doing a survey, I'm in the house 2 hours minimum, and that could go to 2.5 hours, 3 hours.
Okay.
Everything is looked at.
Yeah.
So the house is scanned for dampness, insect infestation, any associated rot. One of the things that's very important is that the engineers you engage should have appropriate experience.
Okay.
These days your house can be conventional blockwork, it can be timber frame, it can be steel frame. There are numerous different forms of construction.
Okay.
The engineer has to be able to identify that and to double guess what likely problems are going to be there.
Okay, because obviously he can't see into the foundation, he doesn't know what's underneath.
Absolutely.
He doesn't see. They would never pull back the plaster and see what kind of brickwork or what
there's
kind of suspicion is it?
There's no opening up done at the stage of the pre-purchase survey. Basically, you wouldn't be allowed to do that by the vendor anyway. Generally, what we do is if there is an issue that requires opening up, then that would be put into the report, and subsequently you'll get permission to do that opening up.
So what's actually included in the survey?
Effectively, everything is looked at from roof down to foundations. Sewers are inspected through any manholes. You do a crude flow test.
And would that, just on the sewers, would that involve, say, a one-off detached home in the country on a half-acre site, as well as a house in an estate where you have shared sewer systems, all kinds of stuff?
In fact, your country house is probably a little bit more difficult because it may have a septic tank or a treatment plant, so that has to be assessed as well. And sewers are notorious for problems. In the Cork area, there's a specific problem because the city is built on karst limestone. You're subject to subsidence. And everybody kind of from
dirty word in Cork, isn't it?
Absolutely, from little
from insurance companies and builders and
absolutely. So you need to take that into account.
But what exactly is subsidence?
Subsidence basically is a deterioration of the load-bearing ground beneath foundations due to constant and progressive leakage from sewers. No, that actually is probably not correct. And the reason I'm saying that is subsidence is defined as a natural occurring movement of the ground. Whereas defect from sewers is not naturally occurring, but it's used as a generic term.
So there's a combination of all the pipework, obviously taking water away from the house and water into the house, or storage away from the house, and they've leaked over time, and they've leaked into because of the foundation under Cork City that's susceptible to I would say drift, but it's
well, limestone is soluble soluble rock anyway. But also what happens is that a cavern actually the roof of a cavern dissolves, the hole works upwards, it gets so thin that it eventually collapses and you get a swallow hole.
So the idea would be then, just on the subsidence issue, is that if someone's buying a house and you say, listen, we think this is the area this house is built on is notorious for subsidence. We feel structurally the foundation isn't sound. So if you were getting a mortgage or a loan from a bank, as a solicitor, we would have to then what's called qualified title. So we can't say that house is 100% integrity. So we have our title, the person selling it has the right to sell it, our building regulations and our planning permission. So now our structural survey is indicating that the actual foundation is not sound. So what we would have to do there is either go back to the bank and say, listen, you need to make your own decision on whether you think this house is an asset worth lending upon, or is it then a case where you recommend it's called underpinning? Is it, or is there remedial works, or is that how that works?
Yes, we can fix anything. It's just a matter of cost. From the bank's viewpoint, if they see the word subsidence in a report, they're starting to run a mile effectively. Because
you can't get insurance then.
Correct.
And so you can't insure your house, you can't borrow against it.
No, you won't get insurance for subsidence now anyway. Not in the Cork area. So very difficult.
And if then you're, say, a cash purchaser, so you don't need to borrow money, and then I suppose we're getting a bit sidetracked on subsidence, but just to answer that question, so, or even you say you do your structural survey and you find something severe in the house, and you're a cash purchaser, that doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't buy the house. You can, in my view, it could be three things. One, we quantify the cost of actually repair works and we negotiate that off the purchase price. Two, we ask the seller to fix it and come back to us when it's fixed. Or three, the seller says it's take it or leave it.
Yes.
That's probably not a wise thing to do though, is it? If your structural survey is
The best scenario is where you get a reduction in the purchase price, because then you have control over the remedial works.
Okay.
If the vendor is doing the work, it's in their interest to do as little as possible.
The minimum as possible to get it over the line.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's better to do it yourself if you can manage it.
And so what then is it? It's called pre-purchase survey. Is that the actual technical name
That's
from it?
the
And that's
technical name.
And that. So you recommend every house, every purchase that you're buying.
Yes, even a new house.
Okay.
In a new house scenario where there's a 10-year structural guarantee, we have found significant roof problems. We found dampness problems due to bad detailing. It's ongoing, even in new estates.
Do you mean if it's say it's a brand new estate where there's 150 houses and it's been built by a big developer, and then you're buying as a first time buyer, you should engage your own engineer.
Yes.
And should that be done when the house is complete, or as the process is?
It varies a lot. With new regulations and the new building regulations and building control regulations, that's what's called an assigned certifier.
Okay.
He has to be employed by the developer.
Okay.
And he is to supervise and sign off on the property on completion.
Okay.
And that is giving an added benefit to the purchaser. Now that's new
on a new build.
New legislation.
Okay.
So it's only been in for the past couple of years.
Okay.
So that it'll be interesting to see how that affects the new house.
Okay.
But up to now, there really has been no certification. So the report that you would do on a new house is slightly different. You look at the basic structure, but you also look at what are called snags.
Yeah.
So you might have, say, a window isn't closing properly, or a door has been warped, or there's a slight bit of dampness.
The snagging or the snag list, so that's when the house is, when the builder says the house is complete, you're allowed an opportunity to visit the site with your own independent engineer, and they carry out, is it another survey of the property? Or?
Exactly, we do a survey, and that snag list then is handed to the developer, and he's asked to put all those snags right before the sale closes.
Okay, and then that could be anything, could be small things, large things, it depends.
Yeah, and it varies a lot, and we've had significant issues.
Okay, and then how were those issues resolved?
Generally, the builder will put them right.
Okay.
Like at this stage now, you may have paid non-refundable deposit on the house.
Yeah.
So it's in the builder's interest.
Yeah, because generally your contracts are signed at that stage, so you paid over 10%. We're all committed to finish out a legal entity or legal contract. But there is protections, of course, isn't there? So part of in any building agreement, you would have to you wouldn't be what's called, have a specific, if say the original closing date were to pass, no purchaser will be forced to complete that purchase unless the snagging was complete.
No.
But I suppose there does become a stage though if small things become deal breakers. You're not going to. It
can happen. It's rare enough these days. In estate houses, it's up to the the developer wants to sell the houses. So unless there's some huge issue and there's a dispute between engineers. That's
and what about insurance and all that stuff?
Insurance for
say the actual the property itself. Is that something you advise on? Obviously, say it's kind of two things. One, if you're taking out a mortgage, you obviously your bank will insist on insurance. So say, if it's a new build, is there insurance for the stage of the process of the actual build itself? Is that something like an architect or an engineer takes out, and then is there your own insurance, house insurance after that process?
We're covered under PI, so anything that we do is covered under that policy.
Okay.
The insurance, I suppose the house insurance is actually based on the reconstruction cost of the house, not necessarily the market value.
Right, okay.
And people often get confused with that.
Okay.
So there is a formula, and generally speaking, that's worked out on a rate per floor area.
Okay.
There's a cost for demolition and site clearance, planning permission fees, etc. And that then comes up to your insurance cost.
Okay. And then just on the other professionals that might work on a new build or in a site, so say you have your architect, your quantity surveyor, your builder, the bank and the solicitor, do you engage with all those parties, or is it that the architect, say like the new build, someone has a site out the country, want to build a new house, and they engage their architect for plans, is that a process where you work together with the architect, or how does that all?
The first thing is that I suppose the project leader could be the architect or the engineer. They will bring in the other trades, as you say. So if an architect is doing a design, he will bring in the structural engineer to do the civil works, which is basically drains and all that. And if there's a treatment plant or percolation area required, that'll be designed. A quantity surveyor, if required, will be brought in. He'll do the costings and he'll look after the money aspect throughout the construction. Then it's signed off under the new regulations. The architect, maybe the assigned certifier, he would get certs from the other professionals. So if we do a structural design, we have to give a supplementary cert to the architect before he will certify. So there's in the new regulations now, there's a structured approach to
very good.
I suppose to design, supervision and certification on completion.
Yeah, and then communication all the time throughout all parties.
Absolutely, yes.
So like the message is you need a structural survey. If in your experience, what are the worst case scenarios if you don't do it? Say like your budget is tight and €600. Now to me I think it's insane if you're buying a house for €250,000, 300,000. You're right. You said at the outset it's it's going to be the biggest one-off asset purchase in your lifetime.
Yes.
I don't think people should be debating over €100, €150 and the difference of an engineer fee or something. It's something that it's reassurance that you need to do. If someone decides to be a bit renegade and not get the engineer's report, what happens there?
Well, we've been in situations where people actually have got somebody to do surveys, but things were missed.
Okay.
In that scenario, you're back into the solicitor and you're into litigation effectively, unless they can broker a deal in relation to the problems. It's actually fraught with difficulty, to be honest, and it would be a crazy situation.
So the idea is picking a structural engineer, pick one with the correct experience, the correct know over that particular project, and then you need to trust that person. It's like a solicitor, like any professionals.
Yes.
And then once you have that trust and assurance, then you can rely on the information they give you.
Yes, and like check out testimonials, check out past experience,
previous clients.
And one of the most important things is experience. You can't beat it in any profession, in particular in engineering.
Set up since 1987, is it?
1987.
That's something you surely have now, Jack. So thank you very much for joining us today. This is Jack Cahil of B.Cahill Engineering, Structural Engineers. We'll put your details up on the screen there, Jack, as well, if you want to contact us. But thank you very much for your time.
That's great, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers. Thanks.